Okay, well, I think it's time, so we can kick it off. So hello, everybody, and welcome to New to Law Review, everything you want to know but can't find online. My name is Danielle Padula. I head up community development at Scholastica, and I'll be co-presenting today's webinar. We have a great presentation lined up for you. Before we get started, I wanted to just take a few moments to do some housekeeping items and to do some intros. So to start with intros, like I said, my name is Danielle. I head up community development here. Part of my role is working to provide helpful resources for our users, including via our blog, which I encourage all of you to check out. We have lots of resources there for law review editors. And we're also very lucky to have our customer support lead with us today, Christine Mathis. Christine, I'll give you a chance to do a quick intro.
Thank you, Danielle. If you don't know me already, either from a training or emails, I am your customer success contact here at Scholastica. So I work with law review editors across the country to train them on using Scholastica's tools for article selection. I also spend a lot of my day in the support inbox, helping you troubleshoot any problems that you're having or answer any questions that you have. So lots of opportunities to talk to me at Scholastica, and I'm excited to be here today as a resource.
Awesome. And we wanted to, well, I'll talk about these next. I did want to quickly note, and I think everybody should know from the description, that we will have time for a 10-minute audience Q&A at the end of this webinar. So we invite you guys to submit questions at any point throughout the webinar. We do have a Q&A chat panel that you should see on the screen where you can put questions, or if you want to put them in the regular chat box, and we'll address all of those at the end. And as a quick reminder, this webinar is a newer resource that we're offering in addition to Scholastica software trainings. So today we're going to be covering more broad law review best practices, and basically focusing on law review management do's and don'ts at the highest level, rather than going more into the weeds of how to use Scholastica as a system. With that said, we do also encourage you to check out our software training resources to help you get acquainted with your Scholastica account. We have free live team trainings that Christine runs every week, walking through the system, helping you to get comfortable. And then we also have the Law Editor Learning Center. This is a free training resource website. It includes some short videos and answers to FAQs. So do check those out to get that more hands-on software training. So without further ado, we'll get started with today's presentation. First of all, we want to congratulate all of you out there. Making your law reviews e-board is a really big accomplishment, and we know that you probably are very excited to kick off article selection this year. But you may also be thinking, sort of, where do we start exactly? And you're not alone in that. There's a lot for new law review editors to learn, and even with the best of board handoffs, you know, there's still just not sort of this master handbook to figure everything out. And you only have so much time, right? So it's kind of a high learning curve, and we do understand that. So today we're going to try and help you out with some of those best practices. So probably many of you are thinking, at a minimum, we at least want to be better than last year's board. And that's not to say that last year's board wasn't awesome, but you want to keep advancing your law review and growing your publication reach and reputation, right? So the question then becomes, how do we do this? Again, it's not always easy to kind of know where to start when you're just starting out. And deciding what better means isn't always obvious. You may not be sure like which aspects of your workflow or online presence you should focus on first. You might not be totally sure of how to set clear and achievable goals while you're kind of getting used to your new workflows and system. So today we're going to talk about all of those things. We'll be covering basically how to get your bearings and sharing some top advice from editors and authors that we've heard throughout the years around how to optimize your article selection workflows to make decisions faster and have more efficient processes. We'll talk about enhancing your law review's online presence to reach more readers. And then the biggest one of all, improving your author experience. We will talk to you quite a bit about that. It's very important. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Christine.
Thank you, Danielle. So let's get started with optimizing your article selection workflow. Great place to start. You know, being on law review, like Danielle said, is a big accomplishment, and it comes with a lot of work. So making sure that you're streamlining these selection workflows is going to be key to how your publication cycles are going to run. And this is, we're going to approach as kind of a goal setting exercise. So as you can see, we have a formula set up, a way to frame your goals in order to make sure that they're accomplishable. So let's talk about the formula. Formula has 3 steps. First step being writing down every single step of your current process. This can be overlooked sometimes. It's a simple process, but you really want to dig down deep and write down every single step that you have, because that's going to make step 2 a lot easier. Step 2 is where you identify redundancies, areas of stress gaps, and then that leads you into being able to set these realistic goals, improving from last year's board, right? So setting those goals to make sure that you're clearing up those bottlenecks and improving those redundancies. So one of the goals that we hear quite often at Scholastica is we want to select articles faster. Cool, great goal. Super ambiguous. So let's work through that formula to really get a SMART goal going. So using step 1, writing down everything you know about your current process. This can be information that was shared by your outgoing board. It could be information shared by faculty advisors, any information that you currently know. If you don't know where to start, no worries. We actually have a law review starter kit, and no need to write down this URL. Danielle and I will be sharing this as part of our follow-up email with you all, but it's a great place to start to kind of focus your attention and get the process started, especially if you're starting with nothing. It can help you jumpstart that process. So let's look at an example of a fictional law review and their workflow, their current workflow. Now, as you can see, this is very detailed. They've gone through and rigorously listed out all of their steps. They've even included a glossary of terms, which may seem like overkill, but if you're thinking about passing this knowledge to your next board, that glossary of terms can come in really handy to them when maybe they receive a notebook with the steps and they have to kind of decode it. So providing that level of context, that rich context, can make sure that your information is being passed on to your boards. But then you'll also see that it'll help you to figure out where your redundancies, where your bottlenecks are. So it'll move you into step 2. And what we're looking for in step 2, remember, is what we can do better. So are there too many people involved, too few people involved? Where are you wasting your time? Where can we standardize or automate? These are all really legitimate things to look for. So if we can look at the workflow in a different way, we've kind of created a graph here, a chart that you can visualize the different steps in the workflow. So at the very top, you have the article editor reading all new submissions, kind of cursory review, and then it goes through these various steps. Now let's see what the bottlenecks might be. So these areas in red are highlighted as potential bottlenecks. First of all, you have one article editor reading all the new submissions. Is that slowing your process down? Do they just not have enough bandwidth to get through all of those articles? Maybe you need to increase the amount of article editors reading through those submissions. If you can do that, great. That'll increase your efficiency. If you don't have the bandwidth to add that person, what else can you do? Maybe you can create a standardized rubric that as the cursory read is happening, you can easily check off things that will either move it on to the next level or reject the piece, right? So an example would be, maybe you know that there's a specific topic that you will never publish as a law review. So let's say it's tax law. Now, when your AE receives a paper that is clearly, even just by looking at the keywords, you can tell it's about tax law, they can knock it off their list, they don't have to read it, they can reject the piece and move on. Or you could make sure that your submission guidelines are updated so that at the very beginning of the process, authors know that if they have an article on tax law, they should not be submitting it to your journal. So these are the areas that you can note as improvement to kind of remove those bottlenecks to make the process a little smoother. So that'll move you into step 3. And in step 3, it can be helpful maybe to set sub-goals for yourself to then finally push yourself towards that ultimate goal. So if we're thinking about sub-goals, if the main goal is selecting articles faster, maybe the sub-goal is to make the cursory read 2 times as fast. And then you need a metric by which you can measure your success. So that metric might be all submissions get a cursory review within 7 days of the submission. Great metric. You can actually measure the success on that. Another great example of a sub-goal would be to add more article editors so that you can find those top articles faster and ultimately extend those offers faster. So if that's your sub-goal, is to add more AEs, then the metric of success could be all submissions receive a decision within 10 days of being submitted. So using both of those sub goals, we can then funnel up into a larger goal, a much less ambiguous goal, starting with, we want to select articles faster. Now we have a very specific goal. We want to have a decision of yes or no on every article that we receive within 10 days of its submission. Really easy to track that goal, really easy to improve on that goal. Let's look at another goal. Oh, actually, let's talk about how you can actually achieve that goal. So depending on the various platforms that you may be using, obviously I can speak very highly of Scholastica's tools, but you should be using whatever tools that you have at your disposal. So Scholastica gives you the opportunity to collaborate really quickly, whether that means passing the article along to other editors or sending it through your standardized grading rubric, or even using our analytics to track the success and measure how quickly these things are happening. Knowing what those tools are and actually using them is just smart. You can use them to communicate with your authors, with your e-board. There's no reason to not use those tools. Any time investment that you spend learning those tools will pay off when you are improving your workflow and able to publish those top articles that you get quickly because you were able to push them through your process more efficiently. Okay, so now on to the next goal. Another big common goal, you might have it. We want more submissions. We're just not seeing a lot of submissions come to our law review. So let's talk about ways that you can achieve this goal or achieve a smarter goal. So first, let's write down everything. What are you doing currently? Again, talk to your outgoing board, talk to your faculty advisors. How about your librarians? We want to retain as much institutional knowledge as possible and write it down. I've gotten numerous emails and support from law editors new to law review saying, hey, I think we have a Scholastica account. I think a couple of years ago our board used it, but I have no way to access it. And that's just a bummer. You can always choose to use the tools or not use the tools, but writing down that information to retain it as institutional knowledge is going to make the transfer for the boards so much more easy in the future, in days to come. So ways to passively solicit articles. So there's a couple ways that you solicit articles, passively and actively. Passive solicitation comes in the form of applications like Scholastica and Espresso, where authors are just submitting through a platform. Perhaps it's just your basic website information with your submission guidelines, or relying on faculty advisors to talk to their colleagues, to ask them to submit, or perhaps to submit their work on their own. And then we have active solicitation. So you may be participating in calls for submissions on social media. You may be actively reaching out to faculty members to ask them to submit or to see if they know of anyone who wants to submit. Or how about tapping your former authors that have already been published with you? See if they have any articles that they're looking to submit or publish to your law review. And then another area that might be unfamiliar to many is contacting authors with articles on SSRN. So basically, SSRN is a preprint server where authors can post their work before or after it's been published, open it up for commentary. And sometimes you can find articles that are pertinent to your area of law, and you can reach out directly to those authors to see if they'd like you to publish their work. It wouldn't hurt to reach out and ask. Those are all active ways to solicit articles. So now that we have all of those ways that we solicit articles, let's find those redundancies. And then for this example, we want to make sure that all of our online submission info is updated. Website information can go out, update quickly. And unfortunately, it can take a lot of time to update those law review websites. So really pushing for those changes actively and early is going to be helpful in making sure that information is up to date. Or if you're using multiple platforms, Scholastica, Espresso, various other ways to receive submissions, making sure that all of your information is consistent across those platforms. Also, how can you get in front of more authors? If you are actively soliciting in one way, what are ways that you're not trying? And are you actively soliciting as much as you should? Maybe you're just being a little too passive. You're not putting yourself out there. You're not asking authors to submit to your awesome law review to be, distinguished by your university. So then we have step 3, where we're moving towards that SMART goal, that achievable goal. So we're setting some sub goals here as well. So perhaps getting that new audience is creating a Twitter account, but not stopping there. We want a metric that we can measure if we are succeeding on this goal. So we are going to say tweeting monthly to make sure that authors have us on their radar, that we are communicating with our community, that we're getting into the conversation, and just basically getting more eyes on our law review, right? Next, we have review and update all website info as a goal. So the sub goal being a sub goal, say we want to review and update all website information, right? Keeping that information up to date on your website is really important. And then that metric that you're gonna determine whether or not you are successful is that you are going to do that twice annually. Making sure that your website is fresh is actually really more important than some people think. At the very least, making sure that you can get your masthead updated. Oftentimes mastheads can be outdated by a year or more, and you worked really hard to get on law review. You should have your name up there, proud to be part of that law review, proud to be part of that editorial board. So going through all those steps, we can now set a more specific goal. And that more achievable specific goal will go from we want more submissions to we want more authors to know when and how they can submit articles to our law review. Just a smarter goal overall. Okay, better goal. We want more submission. We want more authors to know when and how they can submit articles to our law review. Great. So here's a great example of Stanford Law Review's Twitter account. They're using their account to get the word out to authors that they care, that they're involved in the law community. They are announcing various symposia that they have. They are highlighting works that they have published. They are, really just being involved in the conversation, keeping it up to date and communicating with their authors. And now I'm a little backwards here. Okay. Another thing that Stanford Law Review does is they have a form where they can collect emails, and then they can directly communicate again to their authors, updates about what's going on in their law review, updates about symposia, all of these things that they want their law community to be updated in, or at least passively connected to as a law review. If they see a lot of emails coming in from you, updates, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly, that might get them more interested in trying to submit to you and being part of that community as well. So if you don't have, if you haven't logged into your Scholastic account yet, hopefully you will soon, you'll see what's called the conversation on your dashboard. This is going to be an area where people will post comments on a various number of things. It's very commonly used by law reviews, such as yourselves, to make calls for papers, maybe for special issues, to announce that you're open. We're encouraging a lot of communication on any interruptions to production schedule because of COVID-19 and the interruptions in university life in general. But essentially, this is a great way where you can talk to your law community without creating a Twitter account if you don't have the bandwidth for that. Also on the right here, you'll see this is an email that Scholastica puts out. So a couple of times a year, our marketing team will kind of tap your law review to see if you want us to communicate to the authors, if you're still soliciting articles. Another really easy way to get the word out that you're soliciting articles. And then underlined, you'll see that hashtag LR submissions. Authors are really pretty trained at this point. If you do have a Twitter account, we highly recommend using that hashtag, because that's where law authors are looking for updates in the law community, updates to see where they should be submitting, what law reviews are open, and things of that nature. So 3 rules of thumb here. Making sure that you remember that you're on law review for 1 year. So make sure that you're setting a goal that you can accomplish in 6 months. You don't want to be passing your goals off to the next board. That's up to the next board to decide what their goals are. So make sure that you can plan and execute within your term. And then don't create a goal that you don't know what the product looks like. If you don't know what you want the end goal to be, don't set it as a goal. Come up with a new goal, or make a refined goal where you can specifically see the outcome and be able to measure your success. So I'm going to pass it off to Danielle now. This is her area of expertise, where she'll talk about online presence.
Okay, great. So yes, so enhancing your online presence. And what do we mean by that? Improving your website and your reading experience. We all know that certainly lots of law reviews are still printing, probably most, but when we all read, a lot of people are reading online now, I'm sure most of you. So it's important to think digital and think about how to improve that online experience. And with that, we know that everybody is going to be in different places right now in terms of what your current website setup is like, what you're hoping to achieve. As Christine said, you know, everybody has limited time, so you might have different priorities than others in terms of online presence. With that said, what we're going to do in this section is give you some questions to ask and some sort of prompts to think about areas you might want to improve with some suggestions, rather than sort of walking through specifics. You can kind of make what you want of this. So with that, moving to the first question. And this is a big one. This seems obvious. It's very important though. Can you easily update your website? We will tell you, oftentimes that's not the case. Sometimes law reviews have websites they don't even know they had. You know, you'll come in. And that can be because maybe there's one page for your law review hosted by your university. Maybe your last e-board started a separate website through another system, you know, and then you obviously have your account through Scholastica that you want to keep updated. So just make sure that first you know kind of any website for your law review, find them, you know, learn the credentials to be able to update them. And then if you are in a situation where it's hosted through your university or through some kind of an IT team, just really make sure that you have a good relationship where you're able to easily request and have updates made. If there's a situation where you're not able to easily have updates made, you really might want to think about finding a different website hosting solution that you're going to be able to easily edit. And some of the common problem areas that we'll see with websites that aren't getting edited when they should be is things like incorrect submission information, which certainly is going to be, you know, frustrating for authors if you change your word count or something, and you know that's not reflected in every place where authors might look to submit. Submission status is a big one as well. Make sure that you don't have one website that says you're accepting submissions and then another place that says you're not. That's, you know, very frustrating for authors. Another thing is editorial board information. And certainly you just made your e-board. It would be nice to be listed, right? So make sure that you can update that e-board page. And additionally, make sure that you can post articles quickly. You don't want to have delays in publication because you can't update your website. So these are all some things to think about. And then moving to a quick example here. This is an example of Scholastica's publishing platform. We do have an easy website editor tool for journals where you can set up your own pages, add your own copy, put your own pictures, things like that. Certainly there are other online tools that can help you to achieve similar ends. The main thing here is really just emphasizing that it's an easy editor system. And that's really important because also as you're thinking about website goals right now, you might have people on your e-board with different levels of technical knowledge. Maybe someone on your current e-board is like a WordPress whiz or something. That's awesome. Just make sure if you decide to use a system that they know that you're not creating a super high learning curve for the next board. Make sure that it's sustainable. Make sure that it's transferable to the next board. That's a big thing with your website. And then moving on to the next question. This is another big one. Would I want to browse my law review website? So certainly when it comes to academic journals, we have certain wants and expectations in terms of the way that articles are set up. But when it comes down to it, you know, your journal is, you want people to read it. You want people to want to come to the journal website and read articles and not just sort of see a list of PDFs or a list of titles on a page. Unfortunately, that is often the case. A lot of journals, kind of jumping down to that last one, but it sort of encompasses everything here, will have a very kind of outdated print formatting for the website. That's a no-no. Think about your website. Remember, it's online. Make a good online reading experience. Think about the websites that you like to browse. and focus on providing that kind of experience. And other things to consider there is mobile friendliness. A lot of people are reading on their phones, and also having like some search functionality. So going to this example that we have here, this is of course not a real website, but this is sort of the example of the website you probably wouldn't love to browse. And this is often the case with journal websites where it's looks like the printed publication. It has like a table of contents and then a list of PDF links. This is difficult to read online unless you knew exactly which PDF you wanted to read. It's going to make for a challenging reading experience at best. And also it's going to give some trouble with SEO. So this is kind of what you don't want to do when it comes to setting up a more browsable website. I'll show you a quick example here of, I believe it's Houston Law Review. So Houston Law Review does use Scholastica's website editor platform. As I said, there's certainly other online tools that can help you get to this place, or maybe you have an awesome IT team, you have a great relationship with your library, something to that effect where you're able to have a website created. The thing again there is just think about sustainability. You want to make sure that you don't just create a beautiful website for your board and then the next board, you don't want to put them in a situation where they're not able to edit that website and keep it going. So this website, as you can see, has the ability to look at articles by category to make it easier to find things, the ability to search. You have images and visuals. New articles are showcased on the homepage. This is providing a nice reading experience where someone would actually want to come to this website and could find something on a particular topic of interest to them. So moving on to the next question. And this is a big one that's not always top of mind for people, so we do want to take some time with this. Are our articles discoverable? That is a mouthful. I'm not going to try to say that again. Making sure that articles can be easily found. That's what we're saying here. And some common problem areas are that the articles are not mobile friendly. Not everybody knows this, but a lot of online search engines now, Google leading the pack, are using what's called mobile first indexing. So if you want your articles to show up high in search results, it's important to make sure that they are mobile friendly. Another piece is descriptive metadata. And by this we mean HTML meta tags. Each page of your website, each article should have HTML meta tags with descriptive metadata about the article. That's going to help search engines to understand what the articles are about and to be able to index those articles. And this includes not just mainstream search engines like Google, but also Google Scholar. So that's an important consideration. And then the last one here, articles having their own web pages. This is very important. When a search engine is trying to understand a website, so to speak, it's important that there's sort of an easy breadcrumb trail for it to follow. So each page of your website or each article on your website rather, should have its own page where a search engine can see, I came to Houston Law Review, I clicked into the category, reviews, I clicked the article that I'm interested in. That article should then have its own information to help a search engine to index it. So that's important as well in terms of making your website search engine friendly. And moving to a quick kind of other drill down thing to think about here is really the different file types that you use. Most law reviews do use PDF, and that's great. This is the legacy format. If people don't know, actually PDF is the canonical print publishing format. So there are benefits of it being printable, having page numbers, having that nice sort of classic journal appearance. But in terms of search, PDF does have some limitations. So it is worth considering if you can add HTML as an option for your law review as well. HTML will provide better search engine optimization. Generally speaking, it's easier for search engines to crawl HTML pages. You can have that responsive design, which makes the website mobile friendly. You can also link references. This is something that can help with the authority of your website when you're able to, for example, link the references in an article to the articles being referenced. That's something that you can do more easily in HTML that can be quite tedious in a PDF, but that can make a big difference. And then also adding dynamic media. If you wanted to add a video, for example, that might be a little bit not super common for law reviews, but that's something that you could do if you wanted, or graph or a chart. So that's something to think about as well. And then finally, don't be afraid to innovate. There's so many great ways to expand the reach of your content online, to repurpose the content that you're putting out to draw in readers in different ways. And a couple of examples for that are starting a podcast. We've seen many law reviews starting really exciting podcasts. That's something to consider. And also starting a blog. That's something that you could do to even highlight smaller clips about articles, or spotlights of authors, to be able to take a long law review article and provide sort of a high-level blog post giving almost a teaser to that piece of content. And this is Capital University Law Review. You can see they're also using the website editor with Scholastica. They have the blog that they could easily add. That's another consideration with your website as well. And again, other editors can help you get there, but being able to start a blog without having to learn a whole new system and have a whole new setup and another set of login credentials to hand off is a good thing to think about, because the more you layer onto your law review, again, that's more to pass off to that new board. So always be thinking about them in your decision making.
All right, so we have the kind of the last piece that we wanted to talk to you about, and that's improving your author experience, really retaining those top authors, getting their attention. We really just have one piece of advice here. It really boils down to one point, and drum roll, it is communication. More than anything, authors want you to communicate with them. There's multiple ways that you can communicate with authors. So decisions, really above all else, authors want to receive decisions from you. This includes rejections. When you think about what it feels like to not receive a decision, think about what it felt like to apply to law school. If you never received rejections from some of the law schools, I mean, assuming you received rejections, we all get rejected at some point, right? If you never received those rejections, you would be twiddling your thumbs waiting to hear from a university, and maybe the time to accept somewhere else would have lapsed. Those kind of letting time pass, that implicit rejection, doesn't feel great, and it's a waste of time. And law authors think the same. When they are choosing to submit to your journal, they want to know even if they've been rejected. This is a piece from actually the conversation on Scholastica. It was just kind of a very casual survey taken of authors, what they feel about rejections. Rejections aren't pleasant, non-replies lacking in civility. Think again how you would feel if you didn't ever hear back about a rejection. Rejections are important. It's one way to communicate with authors. Another way that you're going to be communicating with authors is through expedite requests. If you don't know what expedite requests are, you don't want to deal with them, when you're using Scholastica, you can turn them off in your settings so you never have to see them. But if you're choosing to get expedite requests and letting authors send you expedite requests, you should respond to them. At the end of that, at the other side of that expedite request is a human waiting to hear from you. So not responding to those is the same as not responding to a direct email that somebody says you. You can't just ghost on these authors. You're obviously incredibly busy on law review. You have a lot of work on your plate just for law review. And then on top of that, you're in law school with internships, jobs, all of these things. Using those tools, again, those tools in your account. So if you're using Scholastica, you can easily send rejection notices. You can easily send replies with 1-2 clicks. It's very simple, and it's basic decency. This is an example of a support email that came in from a colleague, to a colleague, I should say, where they're just, exhausted, frustrated by the process of not hearing back about an expedite request. Another way to communicate is closing when you're not receiving submissions. Telling your authors when you're going to be actively reviewing those submissions, really important. So this is from a survey that we took of law authors who have been submitting to law reviews for years, new authors in the field. We asked them, how important is it that law review editors announce when their law review is closed? Turns out it's incredibly important. Majority said it's extremely important. Most said that it was at least somewhat important. You can do this really easily on Scholastica. You can close your journal for submission, maybe in the summertime when you're doing those internships, those summer jobs. Close for submissions if you're not going to log into Scholastica. Again, kind of picture an author submitting in the middle of the summer. the article sits in the account for 2 months. Meanwhile, you're ready to open back up in the fall. You're logging into Scholastica. 30 more submissions have been made. Now this author's paper is at the bottom of the pile, and it may never even get read, and that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel right. So making sure that you're closed so that those authors aren't submitting when you're not going to look, really important. Also, communicating when you are going to open again for submissions can get them excited, can get them prepared for when you're going to open back up in the fall or for the winter submission cycles. So that level of communication can, again, build that trust, that relationship between each other, where then they're excited because they know you are actively communicating with them. So, okay, so to summarize, Danielle and I shared a lot of information today, just kind of summarizing the top points here. You really want to work on focusing on improving your current processes, writing down what you know, looking to improve. You're absolutely going to want to prioritize digital publishing and promotion. Everyone is looking for information online. The easier you can find it, the better. Prioritizing that is going to be a really great way to bump up your law review. Making those SMART goals, goals that you can achieve in 6 months. Again, your term on law review is pretty short comparable to many things in life. So making sure that you can achieve those goals in 6 months. And then impress and attract authors by communicating with them. It's simple. There are many ways to communicate with them, and that's really going to impress them. It's really going to make them trust you. It's going to get them to keep coming back year after year, long after your term on law review. And maybe when you're ready to submit your article to a law review, maybe you go back to your alma mater and they're still communicating at a high level. That's a legacy that you left, and that's an impressive way to leave a legacy. So those are the goals to keep in mind.
Okay, awesome. Well, as we said at the beginning, we do have time for questions now. I think we have even a little extra time. So if you have questions, please do put those in the Q&A panel now, and we'll get to all of them. Don't be shy. So, and what I'm going to do is throw those all to Christine to start. So Christine, we have the first question is, oh, this is an easy one. Will we get the slides at the end? Yes, you will. We will send you the slides via email. Okay, and then the next question, how does Scholastica's blogging feature interact with metadata tagging?
So I'm not sure that I'm capable of answering that question, Hannah. Are you familiar with metadata tagging, Danielle? That is a little over my knowledge level of technology. If you're able to answer that, awesome. If not, I'm certainly happy to follow up.
Sure. So I will say, yes, Hannah, as Christine said, neither of us are sort of the tech people, so we can get you more details on this question in a follow-up. But what I would say is with our websites and with our blog, we do take care of behind the scenes that metadata for posts and articles, taking the information that you input within the system and then kind of spinning up that metadata behind the scenes. So for the most part, if you're using Scholastica's platform, if you're using other similar platforms, most likely that's going to be handled for you. And certainly for articles, like if you're publishing an article via Scholastica's publishing platform, you'll use the publishing form to input all of your article information, to input things like keywords, all of that, then the system will take and turn into the metadata that you need without you having to worry about it. Okay, so I will mark that one done. Okay, so the next one we have is, do you have any advice for ways we can use Scholastica tools to increase the diversity of authors we are publishing? I'm going to start with that one because it's 2 questions. So first, to increase the diversity of authors we are publishing.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think first of all, you'll need to track the diversity in some way. With Scholastica, we do have a setting where you can enable the demographic information. It would be optional for an author to fill out, but certainly they can, and then you would be able to track that information. Otherwise, you're really going to want to think of where you are doing your outreach. So if you're only using certain forums, so if you're using social media or only LinkedIn, are you segmenting yourself to a specific population that only uses those tools? Are there ways that you could publicize your calls for submissions in other channels, other ways to get the attention, to maybe, you know, use forums, private law forums, areas that maybe, you know, different populations tap into those in different ways. It's really going to be where you're putting your efforts. If you're only marketing to in one channel, maybe there's only a specific demographic that's accessing that channel, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So thinking outside the box on where you could grab the attention of a specific demographic or a varied demographic could be a great place to start.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, if you're using, depending on what platform you're using for publishing, and for example, Scholastica's publishing platform, we have built in analytics where you can actually go into the publishing analytics and see what countries your readers are coming from, what referring websites they're coming from, meaning, you know, did they find my article because it was linked to from another law blog? You know, you can get that kind of granular information. That's something that you could do with a tool like Google Analytics as well. So having that data combined with what Christine is saying can be very powerful, because you can dig in and see, okay, here's where people are coming from now. Here's the range of countries and locations that we're reaching now. What can we do to increase the reach of the law review, and take some insights and make some smart goals from there. Certainly make sure that your goals are have metrics attached to them too, right? So if you want to improve in a certain area, you can make a hypothesis of, okay, we're going to start a Twitter account and see if that can help us increase our reach. Then you can dig into your referring websites to see, are you getting referrals from Twitter? Is that working for you? What can you do to keep using that platform? Things like that. And then we have a second question here from the same person. Also wondering if you have any advice on how to use Scholastica to have a separate submissions portal for state-specific submissions.
I'm wondering, I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, but certainly if you have, so each journal has its own submission portal, but if you have journals that are a specialty, or looking for something that is very different in topic to the main law review that site they use on Scholastica, you could talk to Scholastica to see if it makes sense to open another journal account for those separate submissions. Otherwise, you might just want to, it sounds like being able to track what states your submissions are coming from. And that might be as simple as creating a form that your authors have to submit with their submissions to share that information. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, I would say maybe starting with determining whether or not you need a separate Scholastica account for what your goal is in that.
Okay, and then the other question we have here, let's see, can we track reach subscribers through Scholastica? I'm assuming meaning like print subscribers. Christine, I'm going to throw that to you. Can we track subscribers through Scholastica?
So on your website, I suppose you can have an area for subscribers in terms of like an email listserv. Scholastica is open access, so we don't have any paywall set up. We don't support subscription models. So that's not going to be something that we actively help you with. If that's something that your journal does, that's going to have to be done outside of Scholastica. But if you're just looking for an email list of kind of subscribers in that sense, then you can embed that information onto your Scholastica website if you use us for publishing to help you track that information.
Cool. And then the next question we have, do you recommend that journals set up a separate Scholastica account for the online part of their journal, i.e. one account for submissions that will appear in print and one account for submissions that will be published online only?
That's a great question. This is very common for flagship journals to have their print versus online. I would say the majority of journals are having separate Scholastica accounts for their print versus their online. This is typically because their online publications are are shorter, their articles are shorter, or they're slightly different content that they're looking for versus their print. And so it makes sense to have separate portals that those submissions are coming through, because then you can be very specific and granular in your submission guidelines on your site, where you're directing authors to the information that you're specifically looking for. That is also something that I can help you with. So if you want to email into support, I can help you set that up and work with our sales team to make sure that you have another account for your online submissions set up. So yeah.
Great. So we'll say this is. Okay, so other question here. Do you have guidance on how to respond to authors who decline offers, as well as authors who submit multiple expedite requests, then ultimately end up declining offers?
Sure. Okay. Do you have guidance on how to respond to authors who decline? Yeah. So I mean, that's a really fair question. I think it can be really frustrating when you spend time and energy, right? And you're ultimately declined. I'd say if you are very interested in publishing the article, trying to leave the door open, making it very clear that if they are not published where they want to be, that you are happy to reconsider after they've declined. So making sure to leave that door open can be helpful. Or thanking them, asking them to submit again in the future. I'd say the piece about expedite requests, when they're submitting multiple expedite requests, this is an age-old question of what the purposes of expedite requests are. And I agree, yes, ultimately it can be frustrating if you take the time and effort to prioritize that piece, and then ultimately the author declines your offer. I don't have a perfect solution for that. I would say if the expedite request process is something that is frustrating to you, I highly recommend turning off the setting in Scholastica and going through your articles based on time they were submitted, merit, things like just going through the standard process instead of prioritizing certain articles over others, because getting into the weeds in that way can be rather frustrating. Also, authors can still communicate to you through discussions if you choose to turn expedite requests off. So they can still send you an email through Scholastica saying, hey, I've got a publication offer from this university. I would rather be published with you. So there are other ways that they can communicate with you if you ultimately don't want to manage that expedite process.
Cool. And then the next question we have here is another expedite. Regarding expedites, can you give us some insight into how authors approach which and how many journals they submit to and ask to expedite? My experience last season was that we received many expedite requests that were felt like a broad email blast. Let's see, I'm going to turn to, so my approach has been to respond personally only if an author took the time to personally address the request to me. Thoughts on that?
I think that is a fair approach. I think it's, you can do a basic search on expedite requests and process, and authors who have been submitting for years have a lot to say about it. There is a lot of frustration. There's a lot of excitement. So I encourage you to do that reading and that research on your own, kind of research that. I think like I said, it's very common for authors to be able to send these expedite requests to multiple journals. So the way that authors are submitting in modern times, they are submitting to multiple law reviews at one time, the same exact article. And so it is this, again, very similar to you applying to multiple law schools. They need to know if they're going to get accepted or not. So it is common for it to feel very impersonal. I encourage you to do more research on your own, because the authors say it best from their own words how it feels. I can't speak to how the authors feel, but I will say that you're not wrong in thinking that it feels impersonal, because expedite requests are getting sent to numerous journals for the same article, if that helps at all.
Yeah, definitely if you look for resources online. But generally speaking, an author also should only be submitting an expedite if their article has that yes decision. So, I know also too, I've heard from editors concern of whether the article is just like at full board review. That is something that we try to encourage authors as well, to make sure that when they're sending an expedite, there really is an expedited decision to be made to, hopefully help with that as well. And then let's see, we have quite a few different questions here, or some are kind of comments. Let me get to a question here. Oh, do you offer any one-on-one training? Yes, we do. Christine is your person for that, and we will share with everybody our link to sign up for free training. We're going to send everybody who registered for this webinar an email with the link to the recording, as well as some additional resources. And one of those resources will be how to sign up for a training. So definitely check that out. Christine, do you want to add anything about trainings?
Sign up. Yeah, no, nothing new. We'll send you the information on how to sign up. It's once a week. You get the opportunity to ask questions just like this. So it is a live training, and you can really, I always encourage you to use me to your benefit to ask those questions that are very specific to your workflow, because it's a great way to do it. Otherwise, you can contact me at support and I can walk you through things as well.
Awesome. And then this question is, we have a blinded review process, and this year we'll be asking authors to separate their biographical information onto a separate cover page to make blinding faster. We plan to advertise this on Twitter and on Scholastica's portal. Do you have any other advice for getting the word out?
First of all, I applaud you. That is wonderful. Introducing blindness into your review process is difficult. You've got a challenge ahead of you, but it is well worth the challenge. Getting the word out. So Stanford Law Review, I believe, has a very specific anonymous submission process. I highly recommend that you look at their author submission guidelines, and that can help kind of guide you in how maybe you want to word yours. I'd say, yeah, use Twitter, use the conversation, get those social posts out, tell faculty advisors, talk to your librarians, make sure that your submission guidelines, that all platforms that you use are very specific in your guidelines. Like I said, it's going to be a challenge. So authors, I'd say in life, how little do we read things before we do stuff? So getting authors to actually read those guidelines is going to be a challenge, and you're going to find that you're going to have extra steps where you have to anonymize those papers, that they're not going to come in perfect for you. But they will, it will over time work out. Again, if you nail down that process, if you're communicating to your authors through the discussions, if they're sending in an article incorrectly, they'll know for next submission season to send it correctly. Yeah, making sure that your law review website is up to date, that your Scholastica, Espresso, anywhere that you write down your submission guidelines, that all of that information is up to date, because that's where those authors are going to see how they should submit your to your journal.
Awesome. And then this next question, I'm not sure of myself. I'm not sure if you'll know, Christina, it's a little specific. Can HTML files be ADA accessible? Right now we use PDF because the files can be saved for ADA accessibility.
Well, yeah, no, I wish I knew more about that stuff, but technical.
Our tech team would know the answer to that question. So what I would say, Bridget, is please feel free to email support, and we can help you out with that one. We're not the tech people here, so that's over our heads. Okay, so then the next question. Oh, we have a new one. How long do you suggest having submissions open for? My predecessor suggested opening our submissions at the beginning of summer and letting it accumulate until we review in August. However, I feel a little guilty letting these articles sit for months, knowing that we do not have staff writers yet. I'm thinking maybe they mean reviewers, and that our SAEs are not expecting work over the summer.
I love where your head's at, thinking about the authors and not communicating with them if they've submitted 2 months previous. That's great. We have actually a lot of great resources on common submission cycle times. If you go to our blog. Those resources are there. You can just access the law review resources, the blogs. And maybe we can share some of those in our follow-up, or of course, email me at the support and I'll direct you right to those articles. But we have, through research, just simply tracking when law reviews are opening and closing on Scholastica, we have pretty detailed insight into the common times. I believe that they're August 1st for the fall cycle and something like February 1st for the spring cycle. But again, that information, you can interpret the data yourself in those articles. I would say, again, being very clear, if you are going to open up your law review early in the summer and you won't be getting to those articles until August, as long as you're communicating that to your authors and your submission guidelines, that's fine. If you say explicitly in your submission guidelines, we accept submissions year round. We're rolling in submissions, or we open in June and then we review in August, then you're at least setting the expectation that that author won't hear from you until August, until you have those staff writers and those reviewers. So there's nothing wrong with that, I would say. But again, going to that piece on communication, being very explicit, setting very clear expectations, and communicating with your author will go a long way in earning their trust. And then you won't have to feel so guilty about letting that article sit unread, because you've been very clear that you won't be getting to it until August.
Definitely. And that sort of goes back to the point too of make sure that you can update your website, because you don't want to have one place that says that you're closed, one place that says that that you're going to be waiting a little bit longer to review. Make sure everywhere is consistent and that you can update that, and definitely bold it is a nice thing to do. But as Christine said, as long as you set the expectation, that's fine. You just don't want authors to feel like they put out a manuscript and then it was just white noise. No, that's not a good experience to have. So with that, that is our last question. Thank you all for such great questions. And certainly if you have more that you think of after this, go ahead and email support, as we have listed right here. We also have our Twitter account listed here. We share lots of helpful resources. This is the account where we retweet any law review related announcement. So as Christine said before, if you use that hashtag LR submissions to share your opening announcement, your closing announcement, anything important for authors, we will also retweet it from our account to make sure that it gets the widest reach possible. So definitely use that resource as well. So with that said, as we mentioned earlier, again, be sure to check out the training resources. You will get all of those in our email. And otherwise, we appreciate all of you joining us. We hope this was helpful, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.